This is the new Bambulab P2S. It is the follow-up to the unexpected box office hit that was the P1S, a printer that was my #1 recommendation for anyone interested in getting into 3D printing. Now, today I am going to be giving you my overview and my review on this new printer from Bambulab. We're going to talk first of all about what has changed compared to the original P1S, where it stands amongst some of the other printers, including the likes of the X1, the H2 and A series. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you my thoughts, having spent some time with this printer, not only using it for the likes of PLA, some engineering filaments, but also the most important one that we do here on the channel, TPU as well. Before we get into this, I just want to be crystal clear in saying up front, I was sent this printer for free from Bambulab. However, they have not seen this video before it's been published. They have placed no conditions on me of any sort on this review. And as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. The new P2S is pretty much a complete overhaul of the original P1 series. Whilst in many ways it looks similar to the P1S, don't be fooled into thinking that this printer is a mild upgrade. There are changes absolutely everywhere, and about the only things about this printer that are the same is the fact that it is an enclosed Core XY printer with a 256 build volume. Other than that, everything else has completely been overhauled. Externally, the P2S is still a fully enclosed printer featuring plastic side panels, glass front door, as well as a glass lid. Gone is that small non-touch monochrome display. We've got a nice 5-inch display on here with an 854 by 480 resolution, and that is running Bambulab's 2nd gen user interface that we first saw launch with the H2 series. Alongside the display improvements, all of the main electronics have been upgraded as well. For instance, we have a new microprocessor that supports AI capabilities like we'd seen on the H2 series, allowing it to pick up failures on your print. We have 8 gigs of onboard eMMC storage, an upgraded 1080p live view and time-lapse camera, and there's also an external USB port on the top as well. All of that in itself would have been a decent upgrade on its own. However, Bambu didn't stop there. They have completely reworked the main print system on the P2S, including fitting it with an all-new Bambu DynaSense extruder. This is based on their PMSM or permanent magnet servo motor system that allows them incredible control over the servo motor. We have an all-new quick release hardened steel hot end, eddy current sensing system for dynamic flow calibration, print temperature capable of up to 300 degrees C, and the overall print carriage system has been reworked. The carbon fiber rods are gone and there's now steel rods, but the P2S can actually print a little bit quicker than the P1S, up to 600 millimeters a second. As I mentioned, it still has the same 256 by 256 by 256 print volume, but there is an all-new quick heat-in print bed capable of up to 110 degrees, which also features print sheet detection, allowing it to be able to identify what sheet has been installed on the printer. Alongside all of the headline features, you also have all of the little stuff that we've all come to expect. So auto bed leveling, input shaping, noise calibration, everything you would expect to find on a modern 3D printer is here in the P2S. You can buy it with or without the new AMS2 module that allows for multicolor and multi-material printing. You can also use it with the original AMS module as well as the new AMS HT as well. One of the new features on the P2S is its new dynamic airflow system. Instead of having a cooling fan on the left-hand side that would circulate the internal air and blow it over your print, we now have an all-new duct system on the right side with a built-in fan that allows it to dynamically control the airflow within the cavity. For instance, there are 2 different modes of operation. You have cool air mode, which will draw in cold air from underneath the printer on the right hand side and exhaust that out from the top duct over the print bed just like we had with the old fan on the left. You then have the air circulation mode, which instead of drawing air in externally, it draws the air in via the carbon filter at the back and exhausts that out of a second duct further down on the fan assembly. That mode is what allows the printer to actually heat the internal cavity air to get it up to that maximum temperature of 50 degrees. The main thing to understand about the airflow modes is the differences in the filtration that is applied. There is no normal exhaust system on this printer that filters the air via the carbon filter like there is on the X1 or the P1. Instead, that carbon filter is only used when it is in the heating circulation mode. So for instance, in cooling mode for PLA and others, it is drawing in fresh cold air from underneath, exhausting it over the top, and that is then pressurizing the internal cavity that would force then the existing air out either of the door if it was open or say the poop chute at the back. However, in the engineering heating mode, it is circulating the air internally, so it is no longer pressurizing the cavity of the printer and is instead simply circulating that air internally via that carbon filter, removing any toxins or smells. Whilst you will have the door closed, there is obviously still areas that airflow can escape from, such as the poop chute at the back, but there isn't any pressurization of the internal cavity, so it should simply keep circulating the air that is already in there, reducing smells. This new adaptive airflow system alongside the hardened steel nozzle means that you can actually print engineering filaments on the P2S. It can configure itself to be able to heat the internal cavity up to 50 degrees C, and this means that you can use it with the more exotic filaments, making this a much more capable printer than the P1S before. Like all of Bambu's previous printers, the P2S is available in two versions, the standalone printer itself or the P2S combo, which includes the AMS. Bambu are including their latest AMS 2 Pro as standard. This is the same multi-material printing system that we saw with the original AMS, but the 2 Pro now has a built-in filament drying feature. Alongside that, you can also use the P2S with this, the new AMS HT. This AMS has a lot of improvements over the original model, the biggest being the filament drying feature. The AMS 2 Pro can dry up to 65 degrees C. It can dry up to 4 filaments at 65 degrees C, and it can even rotate the spools automatically for you as well. To aid with drying, there is an airflow system built in, so there's a couple of vents. There is one under here and one under here, and these are actually actuator controlled, allowing it to control the airflow moving within the unit, helping to bring in fresh air but exhaust moisture laden air. With regards to everything else, it is a very similar shape and size, pretty much identical in fact. You've still got the lid, which opens up with the seal all the way around. It is a sealed environment in here, and then you have your latches that will keep that closed. And then on the back, we have our filament input. This has been improved with a nice easy access external button, and then we've got our electronic connections. There is 2 connections for the printer, and there is also a DC jack here as well. You can use the filament drying feature on this AMS with the P2 Pro without the mains adapter, but as you can use up to multiple AMS 2 Pros, if you want to dry with more than one, you are going to need the external adapter for those AMSs, and the connection for that is down there, but don't worry, you don't need it when using it with the P2S out the box. Looking inside, there's visually a few changes, but there's also a few that are not so obvious as well. The biggest being the fact that the motors have been upgraded from basic DC motors to brushless motors, meaning the feed motors are far more refined, more controllable and quieter. Also, the filament input path has been upgraded from plastic to ceramic, which means it's going to be able to deal with those harder abrasive engineering filaments, and they've also reworked the main area, and you can now actually see the main PTFE tubes go into each motor, which means if you are to get a jam in this, you no longer have to take this whole center section out. You can now simply undo the tubes and get to it without too much disassembly. It still has the built-in RFID feature, which allows it to detect genuine Bambulab filaments, but don't worry, it doesn't restrict you to Bambulab filaments. You can still use whatever filament you want and manually configure that in the software. The only thing I will just mention that hasn't changed is the fact that you still can't use normal TPU in the AMS, and the only TPU that is compatible is the Bambulab TPU for AMS. That TPU is a bit harder, a bit more brittle than normal TPU, and it will feed fine. However, standard TPU still isn't supported officially. So for instance, if you wanted to use SaneSmart or Overture, you're going to need to use that on the external spool system, and you still cannot feed that via the AMS. If you need a bit more drying capability than the AMS2 Pro offers, Bambu also have their AMS HT. This can dry filament up to 85 degrees. Now, obviously, as you can see, it is a smaller single unit, but it is still a full AMS module. So for instance, it still feeds the filament inside. It has, again, ceramic input for the filament. We've got our drive motor and our roller at the back, but instead of it being a four-way AMS, it's a single-way module. On the front, there is an LCD display that gives you an overview of what the AMS is doing, but there's no external controls on this. It is all still controlled via the Bambulab software on the printer. On the back, you again have a airflow duct as well as one on the bottom down there, and then we have our usual connections for our printer, our filament input, but there is also a figure of 8 AC input on this because this cannot be powered from the printer. It has its own built-in power supply to allow it to offer up to that 85 degrees C drying. When it comes to using that drying feature, it is all controlled via that main touch display on the front. You don't need a separate mains adapter when using the AMS2 Pro on the P2S. You can't, though, print and dry at the same time, but it will support up to one AMS module without an additional mains adapter. When using it with the AMS HT, this has its own built-in power supply, so you don't have to worry about an external adapter. But if you did want to use this printer with multiple AMS2 Pros, you are going to need the external mains adapter, which is available from Bambulab to support the drying feature on the extra AMSs. Alongside all of that, there is also a number of little quality of life improvements on this printer. The filament buffer has been improved and it now takes up to 2 filament inputs. We have a new flat bottom to the printer, allowing easier cleaning for all of the mess and the bits that find its way down there. And there's also an improved cutting and cleaning system at the back, just like we found on the H2 series. Next, we're going to move on to taking a look at some prints that I've done on the P2S. We've done your typical PLAs, PETGs, some TPU, and then we're going to look at some engineering filaments just to give you an overview of how this printer performs. Now, I'm just going to start with the very basics. PLAs, PETGs I've used. All of this is fine. I'm just going to give you a quick look at a couple of things and just highlight some observations. We've done a number of benches, we have some multicolour prints, and we also have some silk, which I wanted to show you because you are seeing a little bit more VFA on the P2S compared to the P1S as well. So to start with, the pre-sliced benchy that Bambu include with the printer. So this is PLA Basic from Bambu, just hitting print on that standard built-in benchy. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's absolutely perfect, but it is a fast benchy. You can see that there is a little gaps on some of the bridging there. These bow lines are particularly normal on fast benchies because if you look there, this is actually where we have a change in speed for the deck, so that isn't anything to be particularly concerned about. But we do have just a couple of marks down there, but overall it's as good as I've seen from any other printer out there. I also did a high-speed benchy. That is this one here. That mark you're seeing there is my indication of which one this is. This was the same benchy file printed in ludicrous mode, the fastest mode this printer can do. It is incredible just how fast this printer is when using modes like this. Again, this is not absolutely 100% perfect, but it is absolutely fine. Exactly what I would expect from a high-speed printer. We then moved on to the likes of this Dragon I printed in silk. It is a 2-color print, so we have black eyes with PLA silk, and overall it's come out lovely. No complaints on this whatsoever. If I just flip it over to the bottom first of all, first layer looks perfect. Articulating, there was no issues with this moving around. If I just show you the head, you can now see it in a bit more detail. This was printed at 0.2 layer height, so you can see some layering up on the very top parts. But overall, this is a really nice print. I'm really pleased with how this came out. There you go. You can see the whole layout of it there. It's quite a lot bigger than you realise. But yeah, from a PLA perspective, absolutely fine. Next, moving on to these two. Now, we have 2 rose prints. These are test prints I do. These were not actually printed in vase mode, and that was done on purpose because I wanted to see how the VFA looked on this printer. Vase mode would somewhat hide it, whereas this doesn't. One of these is printed on the new P2S, and one of these is printed on the original P1S. This is the P2S version. Overall, the print has come out fine, but you can see some VFA on this when I rotate it. It is noticeable that in the different speeds the banding shows, particularly there. If I just tilt it down, you can see it here and there, definitely more pronounced there towards the top, and then you can see it when I look inside. If I just do a comparison to this was the same filament printed on the P1S. Literally, they were printed one after the other, and you can see whilst there still is some VFA evident, it isn't quite as noticeable as it is on the P2S. This is something other people have commented on. Overall, it isn't something I'm particularly worried about with the kind of printing that I do. Again, it's a little shinier on the P1S as well. But yeah, not terrible, but not quite as clean as it is on the original version. Looking around the rest of the rows though, bottom layer has come out absolutely perfect. No real issues at all. And in fact, I have on the P1S seen a little bit of colour shift as a result of the speed changes in the slicing. You get a slightly different colour at the bottom, where the bottom of it is compared to the top. However, we're not really seeing that as much on the P2S, although as you can see, it doesn't quite look as clean as the original. Next, moving over to the Octopi, and I just want to show you a mistake that I made here. So, printed on the P2S, 4-color print. Overall, it's come out really well, apart from the white, and that is because I didn't put in the correct filament. I thought I put in normal white PLA, and instead I was using PLA Aero. The printer actually picked it up. I didn't spot this, but PLA Aero doesn't print as well as normal PLA. It has a habit of stringing badly, especially when it isn't dried, and my stuff wasn't dried, and as a result of that, it's made a bit of a mess around the eyes. That is not a fault of the printer. It is simply the way PLA Aero is. If you use normal PLA, it should look something like that there, very clean and nice between the layers. I didn't spot this until I got up this morning. I set it off overnight and I had a quick look on the camera and realised what was going on. I'll pop that up on the screen so you can see it. But I was going to do another print to show you a perfect example, but why not show the mistakes we make in doing these things as well. If you are looking to buy yourself PLA Aero is fantastic from a weight perspective, but it certainly isn't the cleanest filament to work with. Next, moving over to TPU. Now, I'm going to have a dedicated video coming on TPU for this printer, so I'm not going to go into great depth here. This is a result of my final tweaking. I have my own profile for TPU. That isn't to say the built-in profiles don't work very well. They're actually okay. I just like to tweak things to get it as good as I can, and I'm going to be sharing that profile with you in that separate video. With regards to printing TPU on this printer, it is a very similar situation to printing it on the P2S. You cannot put TPU apart from Bambu's own TPU for AMS in the AMS module. Normal TPU, you have to feed directly into the back of the printer or directly into the extruder, bypassing the filament buffer, but we will explain all of that in the dedicated video. What I can tell you is the P2S is absolutely capable of printing TPU out the box. You just need to be aware of a few of its quirks, and it actually does a very, very nice job of it. To test the engineering side on the P2S, we're going to be using these two filaments. We have polycarb fire retardant and PA6GF. Now, polycarb is ideal for things like battery boxes, electronic enclosures. Being fire retardant, it's going to offer some additional protection for those situations. And then we've got PA6GF, a true engineering filament, incredibly strong, chemical resistant, great temperature stability as well. People use this for building components to go into things such as engine bays. I've seen people use this to make pipe work for airflow meters, water pipe work, all sorts of situations where you need stability, strength, but a bit of temperature resistance as well. Now, when it comes to using these two filaments, the first thing you do need to take into account is both of these are hydroscopic. They require being dried before being used, regardless of if you've got them brand new and sealed like I have here. Both of these filaments need to be dried, so I'm going to go away and do that before doing the prints. So I set the filament to dry and left it overnight, set it to 8 hours, and it started the countdown, and then got ready for the first print in the morning. Now for this, we're going to use a battery holder. This is something that I found on the Bambu Maker World. We were able to download this onto the print bed. What we will find out later is I probably needed to do a bit more with regards to bed adhesion because it does warp in the print, but we'll talk about that when it happens. So then it was simply a case of slicing it, sending it to the printer, and here you can see we've got that up to 100 degrees on the print bed. Overall, we left it print. What you will see, it does start to warp off the bed. This is always a challenge with some of the engineering filaments. What we're going to need to do is actually put some additional tabs on it to hold it down, which should stop it happening. Next, it was time for the PA6GF. We started with this tube and we set that off to print. This is a sort of nice engineering piece. And then I found this bracket assembly, which is a bit more complex, has some overhangs, some holes, to try and demonstrate how well it can perform. So I've got all of the prints here on the bed. These ones are still attached. I haven't even removed these off yet, so we'll take a look at them last. We will start with the polycarb. That is this one here. This is the fireproof polycarb. Overall, the print has come out okay. We do have an issue here, and this is where the print started to lift off the bed. You can see that it isn't completely flat. This is adhesion issues, not printer related issues. As a result of that, it's had an effect on the layers over this side here. That is still something I need to solve on a long print like this. We have the supports still in the bottom that I printed, so we'll just pop them up. Oh, they're coming out nice and easily. It's just a little bit left there. Let's just get that out. There we go. So the support on that popped out very nicely. Other than that, it's a fairly clean print, no major issues, printed at 0.2, so nothing special. So about the only real thing to take into account with this is the fact that it did warp whilst on the bed. Then moving over to the PA6GF. This is the first print that I did with this. This is this tube. This has come out absolutely perfect. You can see we've got the seam over on this side here up to the middle. What I might do is just adjust the light level on the camera so you can see it a bit easier. There we go. That should be a little bit easier. Obviously, it's going to have this textured look to it because that's what you get with this filament. But overall, that is a really nice, clean print. There was no supports on this at all. So you can see there where it's bridged in there. Very, very nice. You've got the seam for each of them going up there. The seam for that one there going up there. But that is a perfect part. Absolutely stunning. No complaints whatsoever. Then we've got these. Now, I haven't taken these off the plate yet, so I'm just going to give these a bit of a snap, as we usually would. There are some supports on this as well. You can see a left on the plate. Okay, so we have, this is a pipe fitting. What I'm going to do is try to see what the supports come off like on this, because I haven't tried to get these off yet. Obviously, this filament being strong, it is going to have an effect. Okay, so there we go. I finally got the supports off. This has come out really clean. You can see the bed there. Nice. And then you've got the top layer there. And then we've got the additional functional components. So you've got the hinge assembly. So you would have a pin or a bolt that goes through that side there. A bolt with a nut on that side there. And then on this clamp, exactly the same. Has really come together nicely. There we go. Oh God, sorry. Trying to hold it together isn't as easy as it sounds. There we go. So we got a nice pipe clip made from that PA6. So depending on the situation, temperature stable. Yeah, really pleased. P2S has done a really good job. Okay, so to share with you my thoughts on the new P2S, I'm going to talk about it compared to the P1S and a couple of others. Before we do that, though, I just want to be clear in reminding you that Bambu did send me the printer for free. However, they've not seen this video. My thoughts are entirely my own. They always are, regardless of me being part of the Bambu affiliate scheme. If I thought the printer wasn't worth buying, trust me, I would absolutely tell you. The P1S was my favourite printer from Bambu, not because of anything other than the fact that it just worked. And in fact, I highly recommend the A1 Mini as well if you don't need the bed size. Now, with regards to TPU, as I've said, I've not covered that a lot in today's video, but I will have a dedicated video on that in the near future as well. There'll be a link to that in the description. I have one on the P1S, which I'll link to down below as well, but there will be a separate one, and it's fine. If you want to buy the P2S for TPU, there's no reason not to do it. You just need to be aware of a couple of things. Right. The P2S in comparison to the, say, P1S, the upgrades they've done are all brilliant. And in fact, there is only two things that I think aren't quite as good on the P2S as they were on the P1S. That new display is just bob on. 5 inches. Yes, it's not quite at the same resolution as you have on the X1 or the H2 or 480p, but it's fine. Touch user interface is easy to use. The new UI is brilliant. It's responsive. Such a big upgrade over that small display. It's crazy. The entire reworked print system is just great. I can't say, hand on heart, it is X amount better than the P1 because the P1 was already great, but it is as good, if not better. As I've shown in some of these prints, and I'm not spending too much time getting into it, I've done loads of prints, and it just does what I loved so much about the P1, and that is just work. With regards to that new airflow system inside, Bambu are doing some interesting stuff here. They started doing this on the H2 series with the ducts, and then we've got this new fan system. The cooling seems to work okay. Really, the only thing to be aware of, as I highlighted earlier, is this difference in filtering, and that is one of the downsides that I will mention a little bit more later on. The new AMS, well, That's not really new. It's been around already, but it is a big upgrade over the AMS1, and it's a no-brainer to be included, especially at the price point that Bambu are offering it. Overall, as a printer, it is better in almost every way, but there are a couple of little downsides or things that might not be quite as good as the original printer. First of all is that filtering system. As I mentioned, the original P1S would filter externally, and what I mean by that is it has an exhaust fan on the back that would draw its air through the carbon filter. On the P2S, it is only using the carbon filter when it is circulating internally. However, that is the mode you're going to be using when you have the door closed. Normal printing, you'll probably have the door open, and even though the other printers did exhaust air via the carbon filter, if you've got the door open, all of that air isn't going through the filter anyway. Then we also have the noise, because in my observations, the P2S is a little bit noisier than the original P1S and X1 series. It seems to just be a little bit louder from a fan perspective, but a bit more clunky in the mechanical movements as well. I've just observed a few more sort of vibrations from the printer, a few more knocks and bumps. It isn't night and day, but to me, it is observably noisier than the original model, and that is something that is worth highlighting. It will also move around a lot more than the original model as well, and that is because it does have very soft rubber feet. I'm only mentioning this because some people may think that's a problem. Don't worry, it's normal, especially in high-speed printing. You will see this thing wobble a little bit, just like we saw with the H2D. About the only other thing to mention on somewhat sort of downsides or downgrades is the fact that we've gone from carbon rods to steel rods. It is even questionable, is this a downgrade? Because we don't really know how well the carbon rods would last in direct comparison to steel. You'd have to run the two side by side, but carbon just felt it was going to give a few better options. It was a lighter carriage system. Bambu did sell the whole carriage assembly for the P1 and the X1 series, and I'm sure if it isn't available already, that will be available for the P2 as well. Bambu have been really, really good, in fact, at supplying parts for their printers, but it is sort of I'm not going to say out and out downgrade, but it is a difference that is definitely worth highlighting. Now, when it comes to price, the P2S is available in the UK for $699 in the combo. That is with the AMS2 Pro, or you can get it for $479 on its own with no AMS at all. Currently, there is no US pricing, so unfortunately, I cannot tell you what it is officially going to be over there. And in the EU, it's available for €749 as the combo, or €519 on its own. If you're interested in getting yourself one, there will be a link to it in the description. Just to be crystal clear, that is an affiliate link. If you use that, I will receive a small commission from Bambu. That is not the reason I'm recommending this printer. The reason I recommend this printer is that it just works, and it is great to see what Bambu have done here, because honestly, it's quite incredible how much they've given in this upgrade. They could have given us just the new extruder or just the display. The display alone, most people would have taken that as an upgrade. Display and the air filtering system. But to give us all of this is crazy, and it just shows how hard Bambu are pushing right now. We all know there are lots of other printers entering the market. It is interesting times, but Bambu for me is still the printer that delivers without too much hassle. I'm never going to say no hassle, because 3D printing will bite you at every opportunity. But the truth is, the Bambulab printers have become as close to being an appliance for me as there has been in 3D printers. And they are just the safest choice. Go look at any review, go look at any feedback on mine or other videos, weed out the people who don't like Bambu as a brand, and you will just get people saying, I bought this printer, I love it. Genuinely, people keep saying things like, people only say this because they were sent it for free, or they're only saying positive things because they're in the affiliate scheme. It's nonsense. We say these things because the product is great. The Bambulab entered the 3D printing industry and literally turned the game on its head. And whilst There is nothing revolutionary here. What this is more than evolutionary, but again, making the P series the best overall choice for most people. Now, that's it from me. As I've said, there will be links below to the printer. I want to say a big thank you to Bambu. There will also be links to my TPU video as well, so please do check it out. And finally, I just want to say, if you have found this video useful and interesting, let me know anything you want to know in the comment section, but consider check out the links to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee. It is only through the support of my Patreons we're able to keep making content on this channel. We do not accept payment for any videos on this channel. We do not do sponsorship. We review products and we are sent products to review, but no one can say to me, hey, here's a product, here's some money, will you talk about it? It doesn't exist. Products are sent to us to review, and I always say how it is. If you watch my content regularly enough, you will know I am not afraid to say what I think on this channel. So if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep doing it, please do check it out. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who supports me. We would not be able to do this without your support. Anyway, that's it from me on this one. Look after yourself. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.